All right, here we go. G'day. Welcome back to another episode of GST Junkies. Today we're going to talk a little bit about learning to human and the sustainable training method. But before we dive in and start to talk about our philosophies, our values, and what our businesses mean to us, Mr. Erdi, how are you? What's going on in Australia these days?
Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for tuning back in. Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks, Stretch. We are currently in Perth on the western side of Australia. So a couple of days ago, we flew over from Palm Cove. So our last stop on the east coast was up in Palm Cove, right near Cairns. Did some nice trips up there, actually. We did a little hike to a waterfall. I love how much just general options you have for natural spots in Australia in terms of you can just hike over to a waterfall or find some mountains or rainforest or some deadly areas that you shouldn't probably be going in your sandals, but you do it anyway because it's it's a good experience. But yeah, we went up to the Daintree rainforest up in Port Douglas, which was really great, or just past Port Douglas, and currently in Perth, exploring the movement scene and the GST scene out here in Perth again, because I've got a couple of friends around here, so it's good to see them. And then in about 10 days, actually less than 10 days, in 8 days' time, we're flying back to London, which is a bit of a shame, but it's got to be done.
Escaping the Australian winter, mate, and heading back to the UK for the summer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm basically just summer hopping from a different island to island, or escaping the winter as best I can.
That's it, mate. Where's the tan? I thought you'd be browner than you are right
I know, right? I've
now.
obviously not had enough sunlight here. Yeah, I was also thinking I was going to be a bit browner. I think we've just spent a bit too much time indoors and not enough outdoors. But we're in a nice spot here. I'm going to see if I can soak up some of this 18 degrees heat and get a quick tan before we go to London.
Yeah, that's it, mate. How was your spearfishing trip?
That was great. Yeah, the spearfishing trip at the Capricorn Bunkers was awesome. The Barrier Reef. There was a lot of new species there that I don't think I'd seen, mostly of these different types of coral trout species. And also I came across, I didn't manage to get it on video, but a huge manta ray, which was amazing. I've never seen one that big before. I think I saw a couple in Bali like so many years ago, but this one was massive, and I think it had like swam over me while I was diving. So I came up and I was looking around, and all of a sudden I just see like a manta ray swimming away from me. I was like, how did I miss that? But yeah, it was a great time.
Epic,
Great
mate.
trip.
Good adventures. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Nice one.
Australia's just full of adventures.
So you'll be coming back then, mate.
Definitely. Yeah, the plan's to come back and you know permanently set up here, or at least long term set up here. Maybe do what you've done and set up a little home gym like you've done and train GST in my get out of my garage and in the sunlight.
Yeah, that's it, mate. The best of both worlds.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah, it's been getting cooler here in South Australia. So yeah, just sticking to training, eating more, trying to work on building some strength at the moment. If you follow my Instagram, you'll see I'm doing a bit of 5-4-3-2-1 strength right now. Mondays have been weighted chins and strict press, so setting some good weights up on those, which has been good. Fridays I'm doing dips and barbell rows, and then on Saturdays, believe it or not, I'm actually doing some back squats. So it's been good to get back into some strength, but I'm obviously still doing the GST around that. The main focus right now is just to build a bit more strength. So the weighted movements obviously help get my strength up a little bit. I feel it's one thing that's lacking right now. I've spent a lot of time focusing on my flexibility, my mobility for the last few years, and it's really made a big difference. But it's also nice to switch focuses and do a bit of weights for a change.
Yeah, awesome. I've been keeping up to date with your 5-4-3-2-1 method. I'd never actually heard of it before until I'd see you doing it, and I'm seeing your weights going up every week, and I'm getting a little bit jealous. I feel like I should be doing something similar. Just that FOMO, constant FOMO. You see someone else doing something, you're like, oh man, maybe I should be doing that.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. I feel you. I just think I was browsing around thinking, oh, fuck, I'm just not strong enough. But I could see all these other calisthenics and bodyweight ninjas doing some weight stuff. And I'm like, you know what? It's time I lifted some heavy weights again. I mean, I was living on the road for 18 months in a caravan and had minimum access to kit. So it was just sticking to flexibility and gymnastic stuff. But now that I've got a bit of a setup, it's nice to get back to that. And I suppose you're missing it too right now, being on the road, mate.
Yeah, definitely. I am missing some like good structured weight training or like progressive weight training of some sort. So like, we've been floating around gym to gym, but all the machines are different in every gym. The dumbbells and weights are a little bit different. You got to like re-custom to the new place, and then you're only there for a week, and then you go to another place and got to do it all over again. So it's quite hard to keep like the gradual progressive overload. I've been doing it a little bit with some of my body weight training. I find it just a little bit easier to kind of get it done with sometimes. But just overall in general, when you're traveling, it does make things a lot harder. Like you can still get things done. You can still make overall progress, and you can still learn new skills. But having like the structured attention to detail, and it's like I'm going up in this much micro weight every week, and or this much of an angle in my progression, it can just sometimes be a bit overwhelming to keep up with while you're always changing your environment.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I found it hard. Like, I mean, I built a portable pull-up bar to take with me in the caravan, so that made life a little bit easier. But
Yeah.
sometimes when you're traveling, it's like every place you go to, it's a new setup. Like, where can you hang your rings? Is there a flat, hard surface to do handstands on? Is there a nice grassy patch? What if the weather's shit? Like all these factors that are just out of your control sometimes. The days that you travel, and events, going diving, all these things, just makes it a little bit harder to have the structure and schedule, doesn't it? So
yeah, exactly.
I don't envy you.
If you have the same tree that you hang your rings on every time, then it's great. Like we used to do in Haggerston, back in London when we trained together. We had that same branch. Like we knew where we were hanging the trees, and we knew what we were working on for that session. But it's just sometimes when you don't have that, and it's a different tree or a different bar and different this every day, it can mess you up a little bit. It's great though. Like the stimulus is great. That having the new environment obviously is also great. I just find it's just a little bit more difficult to kind of stay on top of your normal OCD level of, monitoring reps and progress and time on attention and things like this.
Yeah, too true, mate. Too true. So let's get stuck into today's topic, because we're just talking about fear of missing out. Was there a fear of missing out on all the GST stuff that led you to learning to human, or what were you doing before you got stuck into building the learning to human model of training, mate?
Yeah, that's a good point. So the learning to human stuff actually started. It was me trying to develop this joint venture with someone else, of combining basically what I consider to be functional and sort of like, healthy training, which is quite similar to what I'm doing now, but with a bit less of the flexibility work. It was more like bodyweight strength training on the gymnastic rings. I thought I had found this amazing training modality, which I mean, it is an amazing training modality, but it was very much, this is all kind of, I want to be doing the bodyweight stuff. And it was joining that with somebody else who was going to be helping out with like nutrition, blood work, supplementation. At this point, I'd just done some bits with Charles Poliquin as well, so I was like super hyped up on the idea of slightly more functional medicine and holistic methods to like fixing people. And I didn't know too much about that side of things, but this other person did. So I said, "Oh, what can we do to combine this? What kind of name do we want for our business?" And I came up with the idea of Learning to Human, because it had a bit of the physicality side of things as well as the nutritional side of things, and trying to come at it from a slightly more holistic approach. The joint venture actually never went through. It didn't work out too well, but I ended up keeping the name for myself anyway, and just striving for kind of helping people and basically get stronger and experience a bit more freedom in their like physical selves through bodyweight training. I think I had this idea, like Learning is Human itself will probably identified more so with me and my own values of trying not to be like just your typical drone living in like London in a city, and trying to have a bit more of a, again, holistic approach to my lifestyle, and going outdoors to train more, trying to get more sunlight, taking vacations to slightly more tropical locations to get out of the city, hunting my food, or buying locally sourced grown food and things like this as well. I mean, I couldn't really hunt in London, but I would when I would go elsewhere, go to Cyprus, etc. So Learning to Human was like the idea of encompassing that, but then I was using the training as like one way to express it as through my services, because I wouldn't teach people to hunt or gather or do things like this. I didn't like the idea of trying to teach things that I don't feel like I was qualified to teach, but I would try and stay in my lane in terms of like, I can teach you a handstand, I can teach you how to use the gymnastic rings, and can teach you how to get flexible. But the, but I can't really say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to be a human, because I don't really think there's there's like a definitive kind of way to do that. And I think I would have to be like a certain level of pretentious to be able to say to someone, I'm going to help you become a better human, as opposed to, I'm going to help you get stronger and basically just feel a bit more freedom for your own physical expression, your own physical capabilities. So yeah, that's kind of where learning to human started, because before that, I was just doing general PT work in a pure gym in London for like a good 2 to 3 years before I started the whole idea of learning to human. I was still teaching a little bit of bodyweight stuff in those 2 to 3 years, but it wasn't my main audience. Whereas I think what I tried to do with learning to human was basically specialize in my niche a little bit more in terms of attracting people who wanted to do a bit more of the gymnastic ring training, handstand training, flexibility training, etc. Yeah, that's sort of how the whole learning to human derived. And how about yourself? You came up with sustainable training method.
Mate. Similar story, but just something I picked up on there, and I'm a little bit curious to know about the functional medicine stuff that you got into. Like, what brought that about? Was that an experience that you were going through personally that made you step into like finding out more about functional medicine? Was that a client that was doing functional medicine? What opened your eyes to that side of the health and well-being?
It's quite interesting that, because I always try and look at this from a couple of different perspectives. Sometimes I feel like we gravitate towards the areas that we're broken in. So like you'll see functional medicine practitioners who have become functional medicine practitioners because they were stupidly broken with something. I don't know, like yourself, you had super high mercury, right? And then you ended up kind of getting into it and then trying to help other people with it. And same with PTs. You'll have like a lot of PTs with the concept of body dysmorphia. It's like people who think they're super small and then they get into bodybuilding, or people who think they're really overweight, so they become physique competitors and then help other people with it. The functional medicine for me, I don't feel like I had anything like very broken per se with me, and it's probably why I didn't end up pursuing it super hard. But I was introduced to the concept of it through Charles Poliquin. So I really liked Charles Poliquin for his strength teachings. Actually, I learned about his stuff before I became a PT. So before I did my PT course, I was actually reading Charles Poliquin's articles online. And then I realized he had this obsession with magnesium. And to be honest, that was probably the most effective thing for me. It was starting to take magnesium and some zinc. And I was like, all right, actually, I am recovering a bit better from my workouts, or I am sleeping a bit better, or I do just generally feel a little bit better. And then I started playing with a couple of the other hacks and whatever you want to call them, biohacks, if you want to go down that route. But the other little tools that he had on these articles, one of them was did you ever try the pinch of Himalayan salt with lemon shot in the mornings? So it's like a little bit of warm water, I think it was, and then it was like I think it was half a lemon or half a lime, just like squeezed, and a quarter teaspoon of Himalayan salt. And I did that every morning. I was like, wow, I feel like I did feel a lot better for it. I mean, some people call it biohacks, or you could just literally just call it fucking, what's it? Electrolytes. It's like your natural electrolyte, right? Like people have been doing this stuff for years, but then now you've got these concept of these like health gurus trying to like preach this stuff. Anyway, that's another story. And I was like, oh, this is quite effective, and some of the things he recommends are quite effective. And then I started looking at blood panels, and there was like some books which like spoke about bloods and how our average blood recordings in like the UK doctors and things like that are very below average to what a healthy person should actually have. Or if you're trying to, I hate to use the word, but like optimize your health, then you shouldn't be like trying to strive for like average levels that people kind of go for in the UK health scene. So yeah, I kind of got basically Charles Poliquin is the answer to your question. He got me very interested in it from his strength teachings into that. Yeah, I found it very interesting.
Yeah, awesome, man. I think it's a different side of like the health and fitness industry that maybe a lot of us sort of discover a little bit later. Like we get heavily wrapped up in training and maybe a little bit about nutrition and diet, but we don't really go down the line of functional medicine. And I think when we start to look at that and we start to understand, the functional ranges of health for vitamins and minerals, and we start to look at our hormones and we start to go down that line of thinking, it can really change our perspective around the whole health and well-being sort of idea, and maybe where the fitness industry is going wrong. And that's probably what led us to where we are today a little bit. I've got a similar story, and obviously I've done a lot with functional medicine myself, and it really did change my perspective a lot from the early days of training. As you know, and a lot of my clients and stuff know, is I started my training like after playing team sports as a kid. When I moved to London as an adult, like I started running, and I just got sucked into the idea of endurance training and thought that, triathletes were the fittest and healthiest people in the world because, aerobic fitness, that's the key. Yeah. So I got swept up in that. And for 5 years, I competed in triathlons and marathons and Ironman events. And it had a negative impact on my health. And at the time, I didn't really think too much about the training. I thought that, the training was the good thing and I needed to do more of it. I just put it down to stress with work, stress with living in London, environmental stresses, like a whole heap of other things going on in my life, but not really tying it back to, what's actually the training doing to me. Halfway through that sort of career in endurance sports, I started thinking about how can I train differently. I just didn't have the time to commit, 15, 20 hours a week to swimming, running, cycling. And I met a guy called Brian McKenzie, and he was, at the time, he was running a thing called CrossFit Endurance. So he was using CrossFit as a tool to help endurance athletes prepare for endurance events. And it was a very different way of training. His mindset was get into the gym, build some strength, lift some weights, do some high intensity workouts, and then do a lot of sprinting in terms of, swimming, cycling, running, sprints, and then a little bit of endurance stuff. But we really didn't run or cycle or swim anywhere near the distances that we were competing at. But yet, when I committed to that and trained that way, I felt better because I trained less, and I also improved in terms of all of my competition results. So times just got better and better and better. And I was like, well, there's something to this. Like, how can I train this way and perform better than, training the other way that I was doing? That's the typical long, slow distance stuff that triathletes do, being replaced with this weightlifting and high intensity stuff. Like, what's going on here? At the time, I was a personal trainer and I was pretty much doing what you were doing, working in a gym in London. Most people want to lose weight, improve their body composition. That's what you're focusing on. I was studying with Charles as well, a lot of Charles Poliquin stuff, and learning all about strength, learning all about, supplementation, health, nutrition, all this sort of stuff. And then I started working or training under Derek Woodsky, which was one of Charles Poliquin's lead coaches, and doing a lot more strength stuff. So I stopped doing, triathlons. I just didn't have the time for that anymore. And just started doing like 4 sessions a week under Derek, and then a little bit of CrossFit stuff on the side. But I just felt a lot better straight away. I felt a lot better through less volume of training. I think I went from weighing about 69 kilos when I was running endurance stuff to being about 82, after a couple of years of training with Derek. And that was just putting on lean muscle, which is obviously a healthy thing. I could talk about lean muscle mass all day, but we won't go down that path. But even then, I think with the volume of work I was doing, like I went from being in the gym and, having, 40 hours a week of doing PT to then being a gym owner, Open Momentum Training or CrossFit Hackney in London, and then running the gym, still doing PT, managing staff, still training, still living in a stressful environment, all this sort of stuff. My training volume was probably still too high. And the CrossFit stuff really didn't resonate with me after a while. I did it for a few years and really enjoyed it when I did, but then it was just like, well, what am I actually getting out of this? And is it beneficial for me, or is it actually having a negative impact applying, this high intensity stress? So, CrossFit's a mixed modality. There's weightlifting in there, there's strength training in there, there's gymnastic stuff in there, there's the conditioning component. And I was absorbing as much information as I could. I wanted to learn how to write the program for the gym members. I wanted to do it in a creative way that was beneficial for their health. You know, we've got some gym members training 4 or 5 times a week, coming back-to-back sessions. How do you program around that? How do you make sure that you're not breaking them and you're taking care of their health and longevity? So I was absorbing as much of that information as I could. But at the same time, for my own training, I was just like, this is not really for me right now. It's not working for me. I need to find something else. And one of the things I loved about CrossFit was the bodyweight stuff. I was one of the smaller guys in the gym, unfortunately. So when the workouts got heavy, I was the guy that got left behind. But when the workouts were more bodyweight, more pull-ups, more handstand push-ups, more of that sort of stuff, I was the guy that was probably doing quite well with that workout. So I was like, well, I'll just stick to what I'm good at. Let's do the bodyweight stuff. And I started to immerse myself more into the bodyweight training, but I saw that as a more sustainable approach to training, especially as I was getting older, I'm aging, especially as I'm getting older. It's something I feel I can do for a lot longer. And my health has always been something that's been important to me. And I think, you know, my idea of taking up endurance training was I wanted to be healthy. My idea of becoming a personal trainer was health and longevity. And longevity, I think we can look at it in terms of how long we live for. But, I sort of said this to you before, that as we age, if we're not in good health and we can't even move ourselves around, or, we can't think straight, whatever's happened to us, if we're plagued by disease or illness, then that's not really life. That's not really living. I don't think that longevity is what we should strive for. I think it's health span. I want to be as healthy as I can be for as long as I can be. I want to be able to move around. I want to be able to think. I want to have the capacity to take control of my life. And I think when we lose that, it's a really sad thing. So, that's probably what sort of led me down the path that I'm following right now, working with functional medicine doctors, taking care of my health, training smarter, all these things, living outside of a big city. And I think, you and I will resonate on a lot of that sort of stuff, mate.
Yeah, for sure. We both wanted to get out of the city. It's funny because you left Australia to dive into the city, and then got really specialized with your training, with your triathlons, and then you're like, oh shit, I need a bit more sustainability in my training. Went over to your to like the more generic approach to training, but also you were like, oh, I want to be a bit more human. I want to get out of London again, come back to Oz and living in the sticks. Love it.
When I left Australia, I was actually working in finance. I'd worked for the National Australia Bank in Australia, and then when I went to London, I was still doing technology stuff. I actually studied a Bachelor of Computer Science, and that was my career there. And I didn't change careers or become a personal trainer until I got to London. And I think a big part of that was the shift. It was like, fuck, if I stay in the office and I sit at a desk all day, I'm gonna look like half of these other people in the office around me, and they're not very healthy people. And is this really what I want to do? So then, while I was in London, that's when I changed careers, and that's where health started to become a focus. As I think as a young personal trainer, you sort of got to be in the cities if you're going to do face-to-face training. That's obviously where the clientele are. That's where you can make good money, and it's the opportunity to learn too. There are so many great coaches that travel the world and go to the big cities to teach their certifications and workshops. And, if you're in a place like London, you've got access to all that sort of stuff. So I don't regret it. I really enjoyed my time in London, but it did start to grate on me, and I did start to think, what is this doing to my overall health? Like living in this environment, what are the impacts here? And can I really be preaching health and fitness and well-being if I'm living in a city and I'm treating myself like this, or treating my body like this? Like, what is that really doing to me? So a lot of questions came up at the time for me, and I think that's what led me to make the decision to move back to Australia.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think you definitely did the right thing going back to Australia, but London was a very nice, what do you want to call it, like hotspot for learning, for education, and like easy access to different places. I remember I did quite a few courses in London, and then going to other places in the world from London to meet people like Charles and do further courses was quite easy to do, and you had the connections there, and it was development. I think London was great. I have you could obviously see people developing all over the world, but London was a nice concentration of that type of knowledge to kind of get what we needed to get out of it and then progress from. Did you find that, when you developed the TSTM method, this was obviously after or sustainable training method, this was after you'd already been, mentally and physically yourself, you transitioned over to being a bit more sustainable with your training. Did you then change your business model when you developed that? Did you start offering something different?
Yeah, I suppose initially it started like I had the gym in London, so I was at the gym for 4.5, close to 5 years before I sold my shares of the gym. And the gym was, predominantly CrossFit. I was still doing PT out of the gym. We had a few other classes. We had like a pure gymnastics class. We had like just pure strength classes. We had a good variety of stuff going on at the gym, which was awesome. And it was a wicked community. I loved the gym in terms of the community and what it did for a lot of the people that was local to where we were in Hackney. It was great. Yeah, my training changed. Like, I couldn't do the CrossFit stuff just because of the high volumes of work and what it required. My body just wouldn't recover from it. And, with the stress of everything else going on, it wasn't sustainable for me. So that's when I started looking more into gymnastics and movement. That's when, I first went to one of Ido Portal's workshops and then later to his movement camp, which is where I think we first met. I think that was about 2015.
15. Yeah.
And it just opened my eyes to a different approach or a different way to training. And when I came back from, that sort of stuff, or once I'd learned that stuff, I was like, well, I'm just going to try this and see how it goes to me. So I started focusing more on bodyweight training and movement stuff, and it just made me feel better. It worked for me. I could recover from it. I enjoyed it. I could get stronger from it. It's just sort of ticked all the boxes. So it was just like, well, this is the way I want to train. I'd built up a wealth of knowledge from, Charles, from doing stuff with James Fitzgerald, from doing stuff with, I wish I could remember the other guy's name. Can't remember right now. The other conditioning guy, Joel Jamison, that's his name. So, there was a lot of different people I was learning from to benefit my ability to write training programs for the CrossFit classes. So looking at energy system training, looking at recovery, looking at, different approaches. So the strength stuff I had down pat. I didn't understand the workouts of the day. So it was like, fuck, how can I use this in an effective way instead of just bashing people or destroying people, because I don't understand the point of that. So, I gathered a wealth of knowledge, and to me it was like, okay, this just all makes sense. This is why this is not working for me. The stress is too much, and this is what I need to focus on. But I still loved CrossFit. I still enjoyed doing the programming. So, I stuck around at the gym for a couple more years after that and still writing the programming. But then it got to a point where it was just like, it's not what I want to do anymore. It's not what really drives me, what really motivates me. I'm heading in a different path. My path is going this way and the gym path needs to go this way. So it's time for me to sort of step down and to leave. And that's what I did. I still had a lot of clients. All of my PT students wanted to continue training with me. There were a few members in the gym that wanted me to keep writing their training program, their CrossFit program. So when I left, I was like, okay, I'm going to start an online business. I'm going to call it the Sustainable Training Method because I want to focus more on holistic health. I want to focus more on what's sustainable for each individual. And I had a small group of CrossFit athletes that I was training with the group program, and I probably had about 20 online students that were doing individual design straight away. So the online business just created itself from me leaving the gym. I spent a few more months in London just closing everything up, packing everything up, getting ready to move and deciding where I was going back in Australia. And then I spent a few months traveling through Asia and just working on my business, and then got back to Oz and started to grow the online business from there. But that's sort of how it unfolded. Yeah.
It's quite interesting. So when you moved over to a bit more TSTM and TSTM branding, it also corresponded with you going online with your coaching and your services.
Yeah, well, I suppose it had to happen. Like I had to build a business. It's like when I was leaving the gym, it's like, oh, what's next? I could, it's like, well, I'm not ready to leave the fitness industry, put it that way. It's something that I'm invested in. And it was like, hey, I am going to build that online business. And I can't remember what led me to the name, like the Sustainable Training Method, but it was more about, health and longevity. I wanted to put health up there as a big value, and I wanted to be there sort of like I practice what I preach. This is what's important to me. This is a huge value for me. This is what I practice, and this is what I want my clients to practice. I want them to value their health and not see training as just like I train to balance out all the bad things that I do in my life. I train to balance out my drinking, or I train to balance out my bad eating, or I train to balance. It's like health is important to me. I train because I want to be healthy, and it's about health span.
It's like training is the punishment, right? It's like people like eat, they have all these snacks and like, oh, now I need to punish myself with training. It's like, no, you've already punished yourself. Like, no, you need to stop punishing yourself with that shit and actually do some training sustainably. No, I just found it quite interesting because you going online sort of aligned with your values of becoming more sustainable, because I remember seeing you in the gym and you were, like, to put it simply, you were pretty burnt out in terms of how much you were working and training and doing all the things that you were doing. And then you getting online and going to Australia was basically you becoming a bit more sustainable with your approach and with your own lifestyle. And that obviously correlated quite well with your new brand, the sustainable training method. So like there was a nice alignment of values there. I think it was quite similar for me when I made Learning to Human as well with the idea of getting online, and it was either 2016 or 2017, I can't remember now. And it took me a good 5 years until I did fully get online. But it was always, it was always the goal to kind of do it. I just never really kind of put the pedal to the metal as hard as I could have done. But I was still enjoying like learning in London and meeting people like yourself in London, etc. But I had this vision of getting online, and then so that I could be a bit more human, a bit more myself, as opposed to sort of like stuck in a gym. Obviously, there's a very heavy human component of actually working with people in person, and that's why I've sort of doing the retreats and the workshops now as well, so I can still keep some of that human sort of contact there because I do miss it. But there's nothing human about sort of being stuck in a gym for it wasn't 40 hours a week, let's be honest, it was like 60 to 70 hours a week when you're working in a gym, because it's not like you have 40 hours of PT. You have to spread it out throughout the week with gaps in between. So yeah, there's nothing human about that, and there's definitely nothing sustainable about that. So it's quite interesting how we kind of like both ended up leaving those unsustainable sort of lifestyles behind and unhuman lifestyles behind to try and pursue something a bit more sustainable and a bit more human and try and live our names a little bit. And I guess we both. Oh, sorry, you're gonna.
I was just going to say there was that period too where you had the gym in London. Like obviously
Yeah.
you'd started the GST sort of stuff, or your own training had changed like that, and maybe the online business was sort of put on hold while you explored that venture of being a gym owner and all of the duties that come along with that. How was that for you, and how do you think that affected or aligned with the values or goals that you had for Learning to Human?
Yeah, that was great. It was also a really big boost and a big learning experience because it allowed me to test a lot of my methods on a large group of people and then see them all training it at the same time and see how they progressed. So I got to basically test things out, and also learn a bit more about myself in terms of how I handle stress and how I am with groups of people. I didn't really like doing group classes, but then when I opened that gym, I loved doing group classes. That was great fun. It was like a mini workshop. Every class was a small workshop, which is quite cool. But yeah, I was working so much. I was living in that gym. I think I had 2 days of the week where I wasn't in the gym, which to be honest is quite a lot. Was it two? No, it was one day of the week guaranteed I wasn't in the gym, and that was normally on the Thursdays, and then every other Sunday I would take off. So it was like 1.5 days a week where I wouldn't be in the gym. But otherwise I was there some days. I think my longest day was like a good 14 to 15 hours in that gym, and most days like on average about 12 hours, 12-hour days. So yeah, it was a lot. Got a lot of exposure to different people, and I also started doing some of my online coaching while I was there. And it wasn't until I left that gym and that I decided to move fully to online, and then just basically just stick with online coaching and traveling. So travel more.
Do you think that's like the grind that we do, the grind that a lot of personal trainers do at that point in their career? Do you think that that's necessary, or do you think that you could have jumped straight online and built an online business? I'm just curious your thoughts around that.
That's a really good question. The only way I'd be able to answer it is from my experiences and opinions, would be let's look at all of the other online coaches that we know, and now let's look at the successful online coaches that we know. So the ones that are like getting good results with their students or have good successful businesses. I don't know any of them that didn't put in an initial grind. Like I can't in my head, and there might be some out there. I could be wrong, but from what I know in my head, I don't know of a good successful online coach who hasn't put the grind in person yet. So it's quite interesting how I do think it's kind of important to like go through these phases, and even in your own training, right? Like, how do you know that you've done too much until you've done too much? How do you know when you need to change your training to become more sustainable until you've actually burnt yourself into the ground a little bit and injured yourself. It can be quite hard to know these things. So I I think there is like an element of you need to experience both sides of the candle, both sides of the coin before you can find your balance. Um, so yeah, I do think it's quite important that people should definitely do some work like in person before they try and, like, I don't know, if they want to become online coaches. I do think having that in person experience is definitely useful, and most people will, from my experience. Yeah, if you know any coaches out there who haven't done any in person but are like really good online coaches, let me know, because I'm not aware of them at the moment.
So do you think like that 5-year transition that it took you to go online, do you think partly that was just you gaining more experience or growing in confidence in terms of, okay, now I'm getting the opportunity to work, in classes and see more people and apply my methods and see the impact that it's having, and then step by step seeing what worked and what didn't work is giving you more confidence and giving you the skill set that you need to be a better coach online?
Yeah, because I did try the online stuff before that. So when I first started the Learning to Human, the brand, I think I said 2016 or 2017, I tried to do some online coaching then, and it didn't go very well. And it's not like I wasn't trying. Like, I did put in some graph. I was trying to do the advertising. I was trying to coach these people, but not many of them stayed on for very long. Probably because I wasn't doing a very good job. I didn't have the experience, or didn't have the expertise I needed to work online. Um, and it wasn't until I tried again, like a few years later, while I had the gym in Bethnal Green in London, that it actually worked out a lot better. My clients stayed on for longer, maybe because either I was more confident in what I was teaching, or I was more experienced in what I was teaching. It was probably, I think, when you take up a service and when you hire someone to help you out, if you don't see them as a confident professional, you're going to doubt their methods, and that's probably what was happening. So I reckon those 5 years gave me more confidence, like you said, to then basically teach that better.
Yeah, definitely, mate.
Yeah.
I was the same. Like the transition that I did to online, like even though the sustainable training method didn't start until after I left the gym, a lot of my personal training clients were doing like one session with me a week because that was all I had time to do with them, because trying to run the gym and the classes as well. But then off the back of that, I would give them programs to do themselves. So I'd already sort of started online coaching. It was a combination of, okay, you see me once. Like I actually had some clients that only saw me once a month. They would come in and we'd go through like all of the movements for their new phase, make sure they understood the program, and then they'd take their program away and they'd train, for a month by themselves and then come back. Or I had clients that would see me once a week and then they would have, 2 or 3 sessions to do solo by themselves outside of that. So again, it gave me the chance to get comfortable and get confident with online training before I actually stepped off that cliff, went away
Yeah.
from doing face-to-face sort of stuff and started doing, the pure online business. But I'd agree with you. I think, as a coach, we need to spend time doing that grind. We need to spend time seeing how people move, understanding our training methods, building a process, building a plan, getting the idea of, how things work. Because when we're running online stuff, like both you and I, we're not doing Zoom calls and teaching our clients over a Zoom call. We're just giving them a program to take away for them to do themselves. They send us videos. We can give them feedback on that videos, but we're not there for every set. We're not there for every rep. We're not holding their hands. It's up to them to take control and take ownership of their own program. And we've just got to try to coach them remotely and help them succeed. But I think with the depth of knowledge and experience that we have and that we've built over the years, it's really given us a good foundation, to grow our online business, which has been awesome to see. I'm curious now, like, you talk about the clients you've got, you talk about the programs and stuff that you're writing. Like, how has that changed over the years? What's working for you as an online coach? What things are going well for your clients?
Yeah, I think over the years, I mean, to put it simply, I probably just started teaching more handstands. I think that was like the biggest thing. I've probably had roughly the same consistency in terms of the strength work, but over the years I've had more people come into me for handstands, and especially flexibility, probably because they started developing for me a bit more in my later years in the GST journey. Um, but in terms of how I write stuff, I reckon I now look at things a lot more long term, instead of I'm trying to get this person results ASAP. Like, before, it was like, I'm trying to get this client or this new student their goal as quickly as possible. Whereas now it's more like, I want to basically work them towards these things over a longer period of time, because basically once they get there, I want them to be able to do it not just well, but to be able to have control of it. Sometimes when you learn a new skill, it's like, oh yeah, I got it, I did this thing, and then you try it again next week and it's not there. What's going on? I realized I didn't like that approach anymore, because I used to get that with like press handstands, some handstand shapes, and some other things. I've experienced it myself, or some bits on the rings, like a muscle up. You get someone their first muscle up, and then if they can't do it again, it's because you've got them there on a really good day when they had like peak performance and whatever, but they don't really have the strength to own the muscle up, right? So now I take like a slightly longer approach. You could call it more sustainable approach, where I'm not trying to, break them on 1 RMs every 6 weeks. And instead, I'm trying to build them a bit more of a base before they can do these things. And I think it resonates a bit more with the idea of my original idea of trying to help people develop a bit more physical freedom, as opposed to like gimmicks and tricks that they can do once in a blue moon when, the stars have aligned and the wind is perfect and they can do this 1 rep really well. It's like, no, I want them to be able to do that 1 rep whenever they want to be able to do it. So I started taking a slightly longer term, thoughtful approach to their training, and trying to start seeing things in like 18-month intervals, as opposed to like 4 to 6 week intervals.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest thing.
And like all of your students now, are they all working on handstands? Is that the primary sort of thing that you're getting, or flexibility? Or, how long did it take you to sort of transition to, I suppose, more of the niche, the clients that you wanted to work with?
Yeah, it's not everyone is, no. I've still got like a few people that are just, actually, I don't have many, but I've got like 2 or 3 people that are just doing standard gym work. They're like, hey, I like your approach in terms of full body structure, whatever, structural balance. I would just want you to help me use the gym. So I have a couple of clients like that, but I think about 80% of them are probably working on handstands, maybe 75% of them, either as a alone, like just handstands by itself, or like with flexibility or with strength, etc. So yeah, not everyone's just doing the handstands, but a lot of them are. Whereas before, I didn't really have. I think when I first started online coaching, not many people were doing sort of handstands. It was a bit more like the strength stuff, or even my in-person coaching. I think I had 1 or 2 handstand clients. Everyone else was doing just like strength training.
What do you love teaching the most? Like, who's your ideal client? The client that wants to come to you that you want to teach what?
I like to teach coaches the most, because I get to basically usually have a bit more time to train, so I can like basically throw more things into their program, which is great. And they usually want to learn all 3. So I like to teach people who like to delve into all 3 handstands, flexibility, and strength, because it makes it a bit more fun with the programming, makes it a little bit more challenging as well. But also you get to see how they integrate together and what kind of plays off on the other, and things like this. So yeah, coaches who basically work on all 3 have been some of my favorite sort of like clients and challenges to teach. Not necessarily my most enjoyable client. Like I've worked with a couple of coaches who are just quite difficult. Like usually they have a lot of how do you say this? A lot of opinions that are like hard for them to let go of, right? Because they're a coach and they know everything. You get this a lot, but they are the most enjoyable programs for me to write.
Yeah, that's it. So there you go. If you're a coach, it doesn't have a big opinion. Erdi's your man. Learningtohuman.co.uk.
Exactly.
I like the coaches that got curiosity, mate. I think it's good to ask questions and try to learn more out of it. And I think it doesn't even need to be coaches. I think the people that come with the curiosity and an open mindset, a growth mindset. You're here to learn. You're here to grow. There's probably more than one way to skin the cat, to get flexible, to build strength, for sure. But if you're going to invest in a coach, then understand their way, or be open-minded to learn a new way. I don't think there's a right or wrong. There was times, being a personal trainer, like when I was doing endurance training, that's the bee's knees. Everyone should be doing endurance training. When I was doing CrossFit, that's the bee's knees. Everyone should be doing CrossFit. Yeah. These days, when I look at GST, I'm like, hey, if you want to do some gymnastic stuff, do gymnastic stuff. If you want to do CrossFit, if you want to do endurance training, go do that. Like, I don't care. Like, whatever makes you happy, like, for sure, go and do that. I prefer that you're getting off the couch and you're doing something than nothing at all. But if you
Yeah.
do want to do some gymnastic stuff, then yeah, we can talk. come and have a chat to me.
Yeah, exactly. I've stopped being like that as well. Less I think just less dogmatic with our opinions, uh and a bit more, I will cater to your needs with the best of my abilities, with the knowledge that I have. I think that comes a bit with like experience and wisdom as well, doesn't it? Just general age. You kind of start to realize, you know what? There are lots of people out there who are not doing my specific way of training, and who are either healthier or stronger or happier than I am. So surely the way that I really want to do things isn't the only way and the best way, because you see a lot of people online who are trying to boast their practices and whatever. Okay, I get it. You need to pay your bills, you need to feed your family, but when you come at it from like this cult perspective that your way is the best way, it's like it attracts a very specific mindset, and it's the type of people that actually you don't really want to surround yourself with, because these people can be quite dangerous with like how they see the world and how they kind of see divisions and between groups, etc. I much rather take the more open-minded individuals, like you said, or someone who isn't fully open-minded, but you slowly help them become a bit more open-minded over time by exposing them to other concepts and ideas. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I like having that sort of more general approach and a bit more laid back of an approach now, I would say, with my opinions and sort of recommendations for people.
Yeah, exactly that, mate. Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I'm sort of similar to you. You're talking about the clients and stuff that you have, and most of my clients are gymnastics, skill, and strength based. My ideal clients are, they want to build strength, they want to increase flexibility, and they want to unlock new skills. That's what they're here for. They're all adults. I don't train kids, so I'm focusing on adults who are coming at this later in life. Like both you and I, we didn't start doing gymnastics training. Like I didn't start until I was in my 30s. So I don't know when you started, mate, what age you're at, but I'd never done a handstand in my life, and I hadn't really spent too much time on the rings doing any strict stuff. There's a little bit of kipping stuff in CrossFit, and yeah, my mobility was terrible. Coming from an endurance background, like partial rep swimming, partial rep running, partial rep on the bike, everything's partial range of motion. So I was stiff, tight, definitely weak when I first started. So, there's all things I've had to work on over time. I've still got clients that do Olympic lifting, but, there was a time when Olympic lifting was important to me. And, I did a lot of that sort of stuff, education around that through CrossFit. I've still got clients that are just wanting to do, the gym stuff that you talk about, pure strength stuff, and I train them as well. But my favorite clients, very similar to you, the clients that want to, learn gymnastic skills, build body weight strength, get more flexible. And I think they're all important factors that I look at in terms of our health and longevity. If you're in your 80s and you can't pick up the groceries or you can't get yourself off the floor, then what sort of life is that? That's not really a healthy, sustainable life that you're portraying there. So they're key components that, I think it's important that we all work on. I talked about lean muscle mass before, but there's direct correlations to, the amount of lean muscle mass that we have and our life expectancy. As we get older, it becomes harder to build and maintain that muscle mass. So while we're younger, we want to do the best we can, to build as much muscle and to maintain as much muscle as we possibly can. And I think that can be achieved, with, body weight training. But I also like to combine weights training as well. So it's a mix of different approaches that we bring together. And I think you're pretty much the same with, your approach and how you work with your clients these days. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. Like it just got me thinking, because obviously as coaches and as people who are, making an income from these services, are we teaching GST because we know how to teach it and it's like it's a skill set that we have? Like is a plumber because he went to plumbing school and got a plumbing degree? Or let's say if we had to start again, would we go down a different avenue and be like, actually, you know what? I would have become an Olympic weightlifting coach knowing everything that I know now. Or would you still, knowing everything you know now, would you still want to go down the route of, I want to, prioritize teaching GST?
I think the grass is always greener, isn't it? Like, when we find something new and we get involved in it, it's like, this is the bee's knees. This is what it's all about. And we can get sort of swept up in drinking the Kool-Aid, as the CrossFit community used to say. Like, this is what it's all about. But I think, we learn a lot through that journey. Like, we learn a lot. And like you say, if you haven't walked that path, then how do you know? Like, if you haven't tried that, like, how do you know it's the right or wrong thing to do? There was a point in my career where, I could have kept going with the CrossFit stuff and build a whole online business around training CrossFit athletes. But is it really what drives me? Is it really what motivates me? Could I see myself getting out of bed at 5 a.m. every morning to sit down and write programs for CrossFit athletes and immersing myself in that world, listening to those podcasts, watching the CrossFit Games, learning more about energy system training and recovery and all that sort of stuff based around CrossFit? There was a time in my life where I loved that and I absorbed that information and enjoyed that, but it got to a point where no longer that inspired me. But I can take away a lot of that stuff, a lot of the principles I got from that, a lot of the ideas I got from that, and I can apply it in a new way, in a fresh light to gymnastic strength training. And I think being able to come at gymnastic strength training from that background gives me something special. It gives me something slightly different to, let's say, yourself, or gives me something slightly different to someone else that's only done calisthenics and bodyweight training. There's a lot of what I see, and you probably agree, in the calisthenics world, gymnastics world, bodyweight training world that we wouldn't agree with. A lot of these guys are doing high volume workouts, pumping out push-ups, pumping out pull-ups, doing reps as fast as possible with no eccentric loading or time under tension. Not doing any stretching or flexibility, not doing any rotator cuff work, not doing any structural balance or stability. There's lots of different things that we can bring from our experience and knowledge we've gained from these other modalities to this world now that might have been missing from this world. So I think, I don't think I'd change anything. I don't think I'd go back and say, hey, now what I know, like, I'll just jump straight into GST, because I've learnt that through experience. And I think that's valuable stuff that, makes us special.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I was thinking about it as well. I was like, would I still be teaching this stuff? If I could start over again, or like if it wasn't my main source of income, and I would, I definitely would, especially with the GST and the flexibility. The handstands is like it's like with the GST, it's the idea of like being strong and having like control of our bodies, and flexibility is kind of like having the ability to kind of get into whatever you want to get into. If you want to try a sport for a day, you can. You've probably got the range to do it, and the strength and the end range to kind of go down that avenue and try whatever activity or hobby you want to try. You want to go for a hike, you want to go up a mountain, you want to go swimming, you want to go exploring. You can do it if you have like some base level of strength and flexibility. Whereas like handstands, you don't really need handstands to be a human or do whatever you want to do. I feel like with the handstands, it's more of like an expression of, does this person have enough discipline to like keep turning up every day for their handstand session, and enough to be consistent with that. But you can do that with anything. You can do it with like meditation. You can do it with any skill that you want to learn. I mean, technically the GST and flexibility you need it for as well. But yeah, I would definitely keep teaching. If I had to start again, I would definitely teach GST and the flexibility components for most people, for everyone, if I had the choice, to be honest, while still integrating some of the weightlifting for those that like going to the gym. I don't feel like people need to go to gyms, but I feel like it's a great sort of luxury to kind of have access to, because it's just a nice integration into like an environment of stimulus and motivation. You're going somewhere where people want to develop themselves and get stronger and work on themselves and basically become, I don't know, it sounds cheesy, but become better. And yeah, it's a nice sort of environment to be in. You can obviously do that by yourself, like you have been with your caravan, traveling around Australia, setting up your pull-up bar. But it's always like, it's nice when you have a bit of a community or other people around you, even if you're not talking to each other. You're both there doing the same thing,
Yeah, I think environment plays a huge factor, and I think you spoke about getting out of the city, and that was a big thing that led me to get out of London. Was like the environment I was in and the impacts it was having on my health. And I think through COVID, we've learned a lot from that, and a lot of people who were living in the city because they had to be there to work there have now opened their eyes and gone, well, you know what? I can now work online and I can live remotely. I can live in a better environment and I can still do my job, and I can have the freedom to train the way I want to train. And there are a lot of benefits about having a gym. Like, I loved the gym when I had it. I love the community. I love the people. I love the environment, the energy, the motivation. Like, I could go on and on and on about all the awesome benefits of the gym, but then it still had its negatives as well. You know, there's the stress. There's
Yeah.
the conflict sometimes. There's the idea around, you know, what's right and wrong and who should be doing what. The volume, the intensity, all these different things that you sort of look at and think, am I doing right by my members? Am I doing right by my coaches? You know, there's a lot happening. We're in a gym, we're training at 8 p.m. at night or 6 a.m. in the morning. Should people really be doing that? We're under fluorescent lights. We're in an air-conditioned environment. Fucking hell, like, it's like all this sort of stuff you take into consideration. We're doing the best we can with what we have, but you know, the environment has a big impact on our health. And I think being able to step outside of the city and step outside of gyms sometimes, and just to have that freedom to know that I can train anywhere. I can be
Yeah.
in a caravan living on the road and still train myself. I can be stuck indoors with a room and a wall, and the weather can be terrible outside. I can still train myself. I think that's a valuable skill set to sort of have and not be necessarily fully dependent on the gym. Like, I totally get
Yep.
gyms. I love gyms. I still, you know, I've got my own gym set up here. And if I am traveling, you know, there were times where I was like, you know what, I really need to go to a gym today, or I need to go to a gym this week and just do some weights training. And the people, like, that's a huge thing. The community, that's one of the big things I miss about, you know, I suppose having my own training program and training my own way. But at the same time, it's something I'm willing to sacrifice for the other benefits that I get from having the freedom to train where and whenever I want, and having that flexibility to do it as well. So yeah,
Yep.
that's been a huge part. And, you know, part of the sustainable training method was the change in environment for me, getting out of the city. You know, I'd done my whole personal training career in the 10 years that I'd been in London. I'd never done any personal training outside of London. And it was just like, now's the chance. Now's the chance to step out of this. And I can choose. I can go back and live in another big city and bust my ass and work these crazy hours and, you know, train people that just want to do weight loss, because let's face it, that's the primary goal for a lot of people in big cities. Or I can build an online business, focus on GST, work on the things I love, travel, freedom, and just have that in my repertoire, which has been awesome to have. And, you know, for both you and I suppose there's a part of that's been luck. We've had the ability to, you know, build a career and build a lifestyle that we want. But I think a lot of that has been hard work, which, you know, we've talked about a little bit, the grind and what we had to go through to get here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the concept of GST, of bodyweight training, sort of fits into all of that in terms of it gives you the freedom to kind of, you know, train wherever you want to train. You set up a pair of rings on a tree, on a branch, whatever, you can kind of do that, or go to a park, train it there, go outdoors, train it in your living room. You can do it wherever you like. But it also gives you the strength to then basically move into or try any other physical activity that you'd like to do. So not only does it allow you to train anywhere in that terms of freedom, but it also gives you the freedom to then use your body in other fields, in other sports, because you become coordinated, you become a bit more, you know, flexible, you become stronger, but you become stronger in this like nice structured way throughout the body. I mean, depending on whether or not you skip a leg day, but if we're talking upper body, you know, it has a lot of transfer to a lot of things. And that's one of the things that I do really like about the GST training and the bodyweight training, is it does open up a lot of doors for people, to play with their kids, to play with themselves, to swing around on trees, to, you know, go to wherever they want to go. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of transferable stuff there, and I think it's great. You know, you mentioned before, like, you know, maybe the handstand isn't something that all humans need to do, but I think you've got the physical aspects of training, like the physical goals that we're working towards. You know, we could be pushing, pulling strength, could be leg strength, could be whatever those goals are we're working towards. But there's the mental aspect of training. And one of the things, you know, you did touch on before that I like about gymnastics training is like stuff like handstands, stuff like back rolls on the ring, stuff that's just out there, planche, whatever. It's stuff maybe we don't need to learn, but in the process of learning it, it just teaches us so much about ourselves. There's this patience, there's this curiosity, there's this willingness to fail. Like, you've got to suck at it. You've got to suck at it a lot, and you've got to just keep failing, but you've got to get back on the horse and you've got to just keep trying. And I think that those sort of mental attributes that we don't often see carry over to our everyday life. And sometimes if training's just going to the gym so you can zone out and get your sweat on, if that's what you love, that's awesome. But is that applying anything else to your life? Is that adding to your life, or is that just subtracting from your life? I think so much in our everyday life right now, we are just not in tune with the present, with now, what's going on. And for me, training is that meditation. It is that mindfulness. It is that practice of like, okay, what am I doing right? Why did that not work? Asking questions, being curious, exploring, these different movements, and it excites me. And that's one of the things that, keeps me coming back to gymnastics training. Like once you learn how to squat and back squat and front squat, then what? I add more weight to the bar. Awesome. Then what? Fuck, I add more weight to the bar. Then what? Like I got bored with that over time. And it was just like, yeah, I can keep chasing weight, but at some point in my life, I'm going to get bored with that. Or at some point in my life, I'm going to reach my peak of strength, and it's naturally going to fall off. I can't keep building strength for the rest of my life. So it's like, but I can keep learning new skills. I can learn to juggle. I can learn to handstand. I can learn to press handstand. I think gymnastics just opens this doorway to this never-ending path. And that excites me. Like that's something that just keeps me coming back to it. And I love about gymnastics training. So I think it's just never ending, which some people hate the idea of, but personally for me, it's just like, bring it on. Like just throw the next thing at me.
Yeah. It's constant route of problem solving as well, isn't it? There's a lot of problem solving with the GST stuff, which I quite like. It makes you think about things in a bit more of like an engineering type perspective and manner of trying to build the different components to achieve the skills. You can't, just do the skill. You have to put things together. And that, like you said, it can reflect over to different areas of your life as well. You want to start a business, you can't just be good at one thing. You need to build different parts of that business. You need to do the advertising, the accounting, the managing, the service, I don't know, whatever it is that you're going to be offering. It needs to all be done, right? It's the same. Like you want to do a press the handstand, right? We need that compression, we need the elevation, we need the active flexion, we need the strength in the traps, etc. So it's all like problem solving and engineering, which I really like about the GST stuff as well.
What do you think it's missing? Like before, you sort of touched on legs day. I think we've all been guilty of sticking to our gymnastics and missing a little bit of legs day here or there. But what do you think is missing from GST? What are the areas it could get better at?
It just needs more biceps, doesn't it? It needs more curls, mate.
Curls, babe. That's all it needs. Just do more curls. Is that your warm up every day? Just get out there and go. Yeah. That's it. 100 curls. Let's go.
What is it missing? It's quite tough. Because it is quite a complete practice, especially for the upper body. And then if we look at like proper gymnastics, it has jumps in there as well, and it has a bit more of the vestibular system sort of being worked. Whereas when we do our normal GST on the rings, unless you're doing rolls, it doesn't really have a lot of that sort of like the vestibular system working, and sort of like shoulder stands, handstands is kind of where, actually that's a lie. It does have the vestibular system working there. I'm just chatting shit. What's it missing? It even has like the endurance component in it with the higher up work. It has the strength work. I'm not too sure. I think you can complete the picture if you can probably complete the entire physical sort of like spectrum, or the most of it, unless something I'm missing in my head at the moment. I'm just not coming to me with GST or with gymnastics type training. Even if we're not doing it right now, like we're not doing front flips and back flips and things like that. I know I used to play with that stuff. I don't do it now, but if you wanted to, it would still be under the whole sort of like concept of gymnastics. Sometimes what it can be missing for new people, and this is the thing, it's when somebody's broken, it's like when their rotator cuffs aren't working properly, when they're not like activating certain areas properly, it can be useful to just basically pick up a dumbbell, pick up a band, and like hit those areas and those weak links with other apparatus, which in theory, like let's say if you had someone who works fine, you give them chin-ups and they will indirectly work their external rotators. But then you give somebody who like maybe is a bit too like forward rounded or has a bit of that kyphosis or whatever, and I don't know, for whatever reason, the external rotators in the shoulders just aren't working very well. You put them on chin-ups, and it won't give them enough stimulus to their external rotators. So some of these like smaller accessory areas sometimes need to be fixed, or at least I find with some of my students using tools like the dumbbell or the resistance band. But otherwise, I don't think it's missing too much. I mean, maybe some rotation stuff. We don't do a lot of rotation work, do we? I don't know. Do you do much rotation work?
I put it in there but like I've got a bit of scoliosis myself, so I think the rotation work helps me a bit. I know that if I do a bit of rotation at the start of my sessions, sometimes it improves my kick up to handstands because I've got that slight twist in my handstands. So sometimes that really helps. When I asked you that question and I heard you sort of speaking, I was thinking to myself, what is missing? And I think, you hit the nail on the head. I think for a lot of adults who want to unlock gymnastic skills, the biggest limitation that is holding them back is strength. They just don't have the strength to master their body weight a lot of the times. And to jump straight into, okay, well, now you've got to master your body weight, that can be quite daunting, or that can be quite difficult. And yeah, there are ways to regress and progress body weight movements, but it's a lot harder to measure than lifting weights. Like if I'm doing a bench press and building that horizontal pressing strength, if I bench press 30 kilos this week and then 32 kilos next week and then 35 kilos next week, I can see this gradual progression. If I can't do a push-up on the floor and I'm doing incline push-ups, yeah, okay, I can slowly sort of go down, but what percentage is that? And when I get to a point where I get sort of stuck on an incline push-up, then what? Like I think it can be harder to manage. So I really think, for beginners, there is that building foundation levels of strength, working on the strength, structural balance, stability of the shoulder. And, a lot of that sort of stuff can be better done or can be faster done or accelerated with strength training in terms of traditional sort of weightlifting. But once you've got a good foundation of strength, I feel that, and you can start to do body weight skills, then, gymnastics training's got a lot of progressions that we can go through to help us build strength. But I also know, and I was going to come back to it now from a different perspective, is like, okay, I'm strong enough to master my body weight. And do I just stick to body weight skills in your mind, or do I combine body weight training with strength training? And I know your answer to this, but I'm going to put it out there. But then why? Why do you do what you do?
I always like to have a bit of a combination. I quite like the combo of, some bodyweight stuff with strength work. I mean, it kind of depends. I mean, obviously the bodyweight stuff can be strength work, the way that you plan it out. Like I've seen different coaches take different approaches. So let's say the one arm chin up, for example. I know a lot of coaches will prepare people for one arm chin ups with weighted chin ups, and they will eventually get them there. And then I also know some coaches that will not touch a weighted chin up at all and actually be very dogmatic about it and say, no, you don't want to do any weighted chin ups. You only use one arm chin up progressions to get the one arm chin up, which some people would consider skill. But this coach is creating these programs in a way that it is quite strength dominant and building the strength there. And I've seen that work as well. So I've taken the approach of having a bit of the weight work in with the body weight work if the person's environment allows for it. If they train in a gym, or if they're willing to buy some plates and a dipping belt, great. I would rather take them down the weighted chin up route than just the one arm chin up progressions, for example.
Why would you do that?
But the reason that you explained with the measuring, yeah. So it's easier to measure. It's easier to kind of like see the numbers going up. There's less nuances to it with the complexity of the movement. And when you're teaching online, sometimes teaching complexity of movement can be harder. Whereas what I find, it's not, this isn't the only way to do things, but I find that if you build them a slightly bigger strength reserve and a slightly bigger strength base, then they will just overcome the complexity issues when it comes to it, as long as they have the strength in the right areas, of course. And then when it comes to doing the archer chin-ups with the chin coming over the bar and their scapula retracted enough and the other arm straight, they can do it because they have enough strength there to kind of pull it off. Or you can just take them down the route of building the archer chin up with the archer chin up eccentrics, etc., blah, 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 and slowly build that strength. I just find that it either takes, I don't know if it takes longer, it can just be a bit harder for people to like visualize what it is that they're trying to do. Whereas you tell them, okay, you're currently doing 20 kilos on your chin-ups for 3 reps. We need to build this to 30 kilos for 5 reps. And now they have a path that they can see without too many variables. Whereas an archer chin-up, building them that is quite complex to get them to see everything perfect, especially if they already have other complex elements in their training like handstands and flexibility. Now everything becomes complex and everything becomes technical, and it's sometimes just a bit overwhelming. It's like, you know what, leave the complexity to the handstands. For the strength stuff, just put weight on the bar or put weight on the belt.
Yeah, exactly, mate. I agree with you there too. I find that that combining the two is generally a faster way to see progress, but not for everybody. I do have some individuals that maybe don't have access to their gym equipment and they still make progress, but I generally find that it's a little bit slower with that progress. And like you say, the complexity of movement adds another layer. And if we can sometimes remove that complexity and just focus on, okay, get strong enough. Are you strong enough to do the movement? Tick the box. Yes, you are. Right. Now let's use that transferable strength and now worry about the complexity of the skill that we're trying to unlock. And then obviously, do you have the flexibility to do that movement, or is that something else we're going to have to spend some time on? We can generally muscle our way through it. I've been there, done that. But at the same time, if we want it to look good, then we also have to dedicate time to that flexibility. Yeah, it's all valuable stuff, mate. It's all good stuff that you and I work on these days with our clients, and all good stuff that we practice and we preach. I think a lot of the times. Yeah, and I think that's sort of what's led us to Learning to Human and the sustainable training method.
Yeah.
With an eye on the clock, have you got anything else you want to add to today's discussion, mate?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. I think we've given everyone a good reason for why we do what we do, Learning to Human sustainable training method, and also actually how we ended up aligning our values quite similarly, but just going down different names and different routes. It's quite interesting. But we both still use GST to be sustainable and be more human.
Exactly that, mate. Exactly that. What do you see changing in the future? Like maybe one question to finish up on, like where you are right now. Do you see anything that you would like to add to the Learning to Human program, or are you happy with sort of where it is right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. Sarah asked me yesterday. She was like, "Can you see yourself coaching people in the future?" And I was like, yeah, I think I've still got like at least another 5 to 10 years in me of doing this, online coaching. I quite enjoy it. Um, I don't think I would add a lot more to it. Uh, as much as I love learning, I don't think I would add too many more elements to what I'm providing already. I might want to go down or just be at the moment I've been enjoying learning a bit more about injuries and sort of like dealing with certain injuries. I don't want to become a physio, don't get me wrong, but I want to be better equipped when somebody comes to me and they have an issue with certain areas. I wouldn't want to advertise that as a service. That's just more of a personal thing that I want to get better at helping people with. But I'm not going to be an injury specialist. I don't. Well, as far as I'm aware at the moment. So yeah, I like doing these retreats that I'll be doing, the workshops, the online coaching. The only thing I'll probably add is like these programs I'm writing at the moment. It's basically just like a nice cheaper option for people that want to do my type of training but can't afford or aren't willing to invest in the online coaching. Like, you know what, here's a program. It basically takes you through similar progressions to what I do with my students, not as tailored to your lifestyle, but it's the same type of training. So you can do it for a much cheaper price. That's about it at the moment. And then outside of that, I just want to live my life a bit more and do more fishing in Australia specifically.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Living the dream. Living the dream.
Yeah. Yeah. What about yourself? Do you think you'll add much more?
I go in circles sometimes, mate, because of I have invested a lot in education. There's a wealth of knowledge that I could apply to a lot of different stuff, but this is just what I love right now. I did do a health coaching course and go down the line of all the health coaching stuff, but it's just where I am in my life right now, what's going on with family, and house swap and so many different adventures. It's just I don't have the time to commit to that right now, but in the future that might be something that I invest more time into. I think the world's just getting sicker and more unhealthier, and a lot of people need more support around different aspects of health and well-being, not just training. But right now, for me, it's the online coaching, just really focusing in on that. keep sharing content, keep creating stuff that's going to help more people, experience gymnastics training, experience bodyweight training, get better at bodyweight training. And like I'm starting to build some templates, just some cheaper options that people can get a hold of to help them work towards certain skills. I'm building together skill-based templates, unlock the skin the cat, unlock the handstand, unlock, pistol squat. They're things I'm going to start to work towards a little bit more. But yeah, I think right now I'm happy with where the business is and where I'm going and the clients that I'm working with. It's fulfilling me, and it gets me out of bed to be able to get up and create this content and these programs. And another 5 years, another 10 years, I can see myself doing this for a longer. I suppose the thing is I can't see myself doing anything else. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's what I came to a realization with Sarah. She's like, "Would you want to open another gym?" And I'm like, maybe, but I'd rather just stick with the online coaching. I don't really see myself doing another job or anything else. I just want to keep helping people with this, because I found like a nice groove of it. It comes with like good satisfaction, like seeing people achieve the goals and the skills and getting stronger. It makes me feel good, and then it's also something that I don't have to physically stress about too much. Like writing the programs is quite comfortable. If we think about it, it's a relatively comfortable lifestyle that we're living. We're not in danger. We're not putting ourselves at risk. Like, we can feed ourselves, we can feed our families. You can put a roof over your head while being at your laptop and, pressing a few buttons. So
it's a lot harder than that, mate. Don't undersell yourself.
Yeah.
It's years of blood, sweat, and tears behind the power of our training programs. So
exactly, but it came. We put the grind in to now live slightly more comfortably.
Yeah, no, that's it, mate. I agree. Awesome, mate. It's been great to chat. It's been great to hear a little bit more about that learning to human process for you, and what's brought you to where you are in your business today. And I hope listeners sort of find that useful. Just get a bit of understanding of what we value, why we're doing what we do, what brings us joy, what we've learnt in our journey, and I suppose where we're heading. It's been a good little post, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, likewise. Always good to chat.
Nice one, man. I'll let you get back to Perth and enjoying your last few days in this wonderful country of ours, and then you can bugger off back to the UK.
Fuck. I'll be back. I'll be back.
That's right, Arnie. With more bicep curls.
With more biceps, yeah.
Awesome, mate. Great to chat to you. Wish you all the best, mate. Safe travels.
Thanks, mate. Chat soon.
Stopping.